emotions and excitement. On Thursday, my tribunal was again to see the cases set in the docket. We were far behind schedule, demanding that I hold an afternoon session. One of the cases concerned a pair of highwaymen who had assaulted and robbed a small group of Passover pilgrims on the desolate Jericho-Jerusalem road. They had killed several of the party. The group showed little resistance. Before the highwaymen were finished, a patrol of Roman soldiers of Jericho came along and captured them. It was a simple case. The pair tried to defend themselves but were unsuccessful. Because it was late and there was not time to carry out the crucifixion that day, I determined to hold over sentencing and execution until the next day. Late that evening, while we were preparing for bed, the servant of Papias delivered a message to me. He wrote that the temple guard had arrested Jesus at Gethsemane across the Kidron Brook. Jesus offered little resistance. He assured me that Jesus would be given fair trial by the great Sanhedrin. However, he also requested that the atonement guards be kept on alert for any uprisings once the news got out to the people tomorrow. I let Procula read the message, and I assured her there was nothing to worry about. Early the next morning after breakfast, I began the day's litigation. Those two highwaymen whose sentencing had been postponed yesterday were brought before me. I judge you guilty, and the sentence in both cases is death. The men did not flinch. I called to the guard and said, "Let him be crucified, and let him be crucified." The two were taken out to be prepared for that dreaded punishment. While they was concluding, I was interrupted with a message that the Papias and the Sanhedrin wanted to see me and confirm their verdict against Jesus. They would not enter the Praetorium because according to their laws they would be defiled for the Passover that night. I was angry. I went out and they wanted me to pass sentence without hearing the case. Jesus was condemned for blasphemy and they demanded the death penalty and wanted me to just countersign their order for execution. They were thunderstruck when I announced that I would judge this case thoroughly myself. I listened to their threefold indictment. We find this man subverting our nation, forbidding the payment of tribute money to Tyrus Caesar and claiming that he is Messiah King. I took Jesus into the palace to give him a fair hearing. "Art thou the King of the Jews?" I asked him. He responded, "Sayest this thing of thyself, or did others tell it to thee of me? Am I Jew? Thy own nation and the chief priests have delivered thee unto thee. What hast thou done?" He replied, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Art thou king then?" I asked. "Thou sayest that I am a king. To this end was born, and for this cause came into the world. Everyone that is the truth heareth my voice." That puzzled me, so I said, "What is truth?" I then went out to the crowd and told them that I did not find any fault in him at all. He was innocent. They responded, "He is guilty." Then someone said that he came from Galilee. That was in the jurisdiction of Herod Antipas, and he was in Jerusalem. So I sent them to him, thinking that he could do what they wanted. They proceeded to the Hasmonean palace where Antipas resided. It wasn't long before they came back. Herod refused to try the case, and they demanded that I convict him. I again told them that he was innocent. About this time, Procula sent me a note telling me that she had a dream about him and that I should have nothing to do with that innocent man. The people, along with the religious leaders, were crying, "Crucify him, crucify him." Trying to think of some way of this, I proposed to pardon the prisoner and was sure that if I offered the choice of that two, certainly Jesus would go free. "Whom would you want me to release?" I asked. "Barabbas or Jesus of Nazareth?" I was sure that they would never want that murderous Barabbas turned loose in Jerusalem. A great, almost unfouled cry rose, "Barabbas, Barabbas, Barabbas." I was dumbfounded. I then asked, "What am I to do with Jesus of Nazareth?" A great cry. "Let him be crucified. Away with him, crucify him." I did not know what to do. I called for a basin of water, and I again said to them, "I find no fault in him." I then took the water and washed my hands, saying to them, "Hear me, men of Israel. This court cannot pronounce Jesus of Nazareth guilty, but because your great Sanhedrin has condemned him to death, and since the Roman perfect must respect and protect Jewish religious laws, the prisoner will be crucified. My hands are clean of this man's blood." "His blood be on us and our children," the people cried. So I said to the guard to release Barabbas and that Jesus would be crucified. I also then wrote an inscription, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." The priest demanded it be changed to that, but he claimed to be King of the Jews. I said, "What I have written, and I am still convinced that Jesus was an innocent man."
I am Joseph Capus. As high priest appointed by the Romans, I was president of the great Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was made up of the religious sects of the Sadducees and Pharisees. Several had questioned Jesus on numerous occasions, and we had watched him on various visits to Jerusalem. Then last Sunday, he came into the temple's outer courts and drove out the cattle and sheep merchants who were selling animals for sacrifice. He drove out cattle, sheep, and all. Then he turned over the tables of the money changers who exchanged Roman coins for Jewish shekels that could be used in the temple offering boxes. He said, "My house is for prayer. You have made it a den of thieves." I was furious. What right did he have to do this? And then calling it his house. I was more convinced that something had to be done about me, because so many of his followers and pilgrims were here for Passover. I had to find the right moment. Then it happened. One of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, a mercenary, came willing to sell his teacher for 30 denarii. We struck a deal, and it was decided that last night, after the Seder meal, we would find a good time to lead us to Jesus. After the arrest in the Olive Garden across the Kidron Valley, he was brought to my palace. We hastily called all we could to come from the great Sanhedrin for a special session. We called several witnesses, and finally there were two who swore that he had said, "I will destroy this temple and in 3 days rebuild it." The trial dragged on, and I became frustrated because there was no real evidence worthy of death. Finally I stood up, and in great desperation said, "Are you the Messiah? Are you the Son of God?" He did not answer. So I again asked and prefaced it with the dreaded oath of the covenant. "I adjure you by the living God to tell us, are you the Messiah? Are you the Son of God?" He replied, "I am as you said, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power of God." I was so angry that I tore my priestly robe in fury and cried, "Blasphemy! Do we need any further witnesses? You heard his blasphemy. You are now the witnesses. What is your judgment?" It was almost unanimous when the Sanhedrin was polled. Only Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus abstained. Now he is crucified. He saved others, but he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants.
I am Nicodemus, and I am a member of the Pharisee sect, a member of the Jewish ruling body called the Sanhedrin. I had an encounter with Jesus one night here at Jerusalem that made an impact on my life. I will never be the same again. I had heard about Jesus. I knew that he was a great rabbi of our time, that he had been sent by God. He had performed many great miracles that astounded our religious leaders and the people throughout our country. So I decided to seek him out, find out for myself who he was and why he had created such a stir among my colleagues, the Pharisees. We met at night here in Jerusalem during one of his visits to the city. I was somewhat afraid of what those in the Sanhedrin would think, but I had to find out why they had been so opposed to his teaching. Jesus began by telling me that I must be born again. Be born again? What did he mean? Be born again. Is it to enter my mother's womb and be born again? I am up in years, and this seemed impossible to me. But he explained that he was not speaking of my physical birth, but of my spiritual birth. He said that which is born of the flesh is flesh, that which is born of the spirit is spirit. I continued to question him about these things. Could be, and he said, "If I told you earthly things and you do not believe, how will you believe if I tell you heavenly things?" So he talked to me about Moses, and how one time he lifted up a bronze serpent on a pole in the wilderness, when our forefathers had sinned and God had sent fiery serpents to afflict them, and many had died. But those who looked to the bronze serpent on the pole were saved and healed. He then said he too must be lifted up, and he went on to say, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." He had not come to condemn the world, but that the world would be saved. He had come as a light to this dark world. And because man's deeds were evil, they loved the darkness rather than coming to the light. But those who sought the truth, desired to know the truth, and came to him, would receive eternal life. I left that meeting wondering about many things, but convinced that he was the Messiah that God had for centuries promised to send to our people. I continued to follow him secretly, because I was afraid how the others in the Sanhedrin might feel towards me. But then the day came when a great controversy arose among the people. Some of the religious leaders as to who this Jesus was. Some said he was a prophet. Others said he was a Messiah. Others disputed this because they claimed he had come from Galilee, and the Messiah would come from the house of David out of Bethlehem. For the chief priests of the Pharisees had wanted him arrested by the temple guard and brought to them for questioning. But when they did not bring him to them, they said, "Never has a man spoken as this man." During the debate that followed, I finally said, "Does our law judge any man before we hear him and find out what he is doing?" They ridiculed what I said by making a joke. "Are you also of Galilee? Search the Scriptures. For out of Galilee ariseth no prophet." They all went home, but I felt somewhat reassured that I had at least tried to defend him. Throughout the next couple of years, I continued to learn more about Jesus and to follow him secretly. I learned that a dear friend of mine, Joseph from Arimathea, also a member of the Sanhedrin, had believed on him and followed him secretly. We talked together many times about Jesus and about our newfound faith. Last night we were summoned to a special meeting of the Sanhedrin, called by Joseph Cassius, the high priest appointed by the Roman procurator. The special assembly of the Sanhedrin was not legal, according to our law, and because the gates of the temple had been locked for the night. We could not assemble in the great hall of the Sanhedrin, but we were to meet in the palace of Cassius. This unlawful trial was held, and witnesses were produced who spoke of isolated acts that Jesus had done, apparently violating the Sabbath. But none could agree. Without two to collaborate and agree, our law disallowed this evidence. More witnesses were called, and again their stories could not agree. After it seemed like hours and no proven charge was introduced, Cassius, trying to find something worthy of death, asked Jesus, "Are you the Messiah? Are you the Son of God?" Jesus replied, "I am, as you said. And you will see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of the power of God." Cassius then tore his garments and proclaimed blasphemy. When the vote was taken to put him to death, all voted guilty in death except Joseph and I, who abstained. So now Joseph and I are here at his crucifixion and have witnessed this great injustice done to the Son of God. We desire that after his death we might give him a decent and proper burial. Joseph has a new tomb nearby, and I have purchased a mixture of myrrh and aloes to anoint his body. This will be done in haste, as the Passover Sabbath is approaching tonight. We have believed in him as the Son of God and our Messiah. Our faith is stronger today as we see him, the Lamb of God, slain for the sins of the world.
I'm Simon Peter. My brother Andrew had come to my house in Capernaum one day and told me that he had found the Messiah. Several days later, Jesus walked by the sea where we were mending our nets and called us to follow him. I had followed him for over 3 years. It was I who answered his question at Caesarea Philippi, "Who do you say that I am?" I replied without any hesitation, "You are the Christ, the Son of God." The last evening, John and I were set to make preparations for the Passover. We found an upper room and made things ready. We had disputed as to who would sit next to Jesus, and this dispute continued even through supper as to who was the greatest. Jesus arose from the table and laid aside his coat and girded a towel about him and went about washing the feet of each of the disciples. When he came to me, I refused to let him wash my feet. I felt embarrassed because we had forgotten to have a servant there to take care of this matter. But he told me that if I did not let him wash my feet, that I could have no part with him. So I told him not just my feet, but all of me. He answered that a person who had had a bath did not need to be washed, only his feet. After supper, Jesus again told us that there was one among us that would betray him. We were all shocked and began to ask him, "Lord, is it I?" He then spoke that he would die and that we would all desert him. I told him that I would never desert him, that I would fight to the death with him. He said, "Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers." I told him, "Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death." I meant every word. I had purchased a sword and had it under my coat, and one of the other disciples had one also. We were ready to protect him and fight for him. Then Jesus said something to me that cut me to the heart. "I tell you, Peter, before the cock crows today, you will deny me 3 times that you know me." I thought, "Never, you are wrong." We left the upper room to go to Gethsemane. It had been a long day. Jesus asked that we pray, and he went further to pray by himself. We tried, but we fell asleep. After some time, he came back and said, "Why are you sleeping? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation." While he was speaking, the crowd came with torches and soldiers from the temple guard. Then from the crowd stepped Judas Iscariot. He had left the upper room earlier to take care of something we thought the master had asked him to do. He came to Jesus and gave him a kiss on the cheek. I could not believe my eyes. He had turned a traitor. The soldiers interested Jesus and bound his hands. I wasn't going to stand there and not do anything, so I drew my sword and wielded it toward one of the servants of the high priest. I meant to split his head in two, but missed and just cut off his ear. Jesus turned to me and said, "Put up the sword, no more of this." And then they led Jesus away. John followed them, and I tried to keep up with him, but then I decided to stay back a little ways. The other disciples scattered, and I did not see them until some time later. The guards took Jesus to the high priest Caiaphas. John knew the servant girl who was tending the gate into the courtyard, so he got her to let me in. There was a fire there in the courtyard, so I stood there trying to keep warm because the night was quite cool. I do not know where John went as they took Jesus into the great hall to be questioned. The servant girl asked me if I was with Jesus. I didn't. I don't believe I replied to her, "Woman, I don't know." A little while later, another person was waiting around the courtyard and said to me, "You're one of his disciples." And again I said, "Man, I am not." About an hour later, a relative of the man whose ear I cut off, also a servant of the high priest, said, "Didn't I see you with him in the olive grove? Certainly you were with him, for you are a Galilean." I then let loose with some of the curses from the days of fishing and swore to them, "I don't know this man you're talking about." By this time it was early morning, and immediately the rooster began to crow. At the same time they led Jesus from the palace of Caiaphas to that of the Roman governor. At that moment my eyes met his eyes, and as he looked straight at me, and I remembered the words he had spoken just several hours before. "Before the cock crows today, you will have denied me 3 times. I ran from the courtyard and I wept bitterly. Later that morning they crucified Jesus. I was feeling sorry for myself, not yet understanding what this all meant.
I quickly looked at the faces surrounding me in hopes of seeing a friendly smile, but found none. Before I knew what was really happening, I was swept into the crowd, wedged tightly in the center of things. It was then I was able to see the three men carrying the heavy crosses to their execution location. I found out that two were thieves. The third was strangely appealing. My eyes kept returning over and over to his face, the face of Jesus of Nazareth. There was blood trickling down his brow, and the wounds from the crown of thorns he was made to wear. As Jesus passed me, he looked up and their eyes locked. It was as though he were reading my thoughts. He knew the sorrow in my heart. Then he smiled a slow, sad smile, as if to say, "It is okay." At this point, things began to change in my life. The Nazarene, exhausted from the physical abuse he had sustained, stumbled. The next thing I knew, the centurion was speaking to me. "You, take up this man's cross and follow us." What was I to do but obey? My heart almost stopped beating. Fear came over me. As I lifted the load of the cross from Jesus, there was a look of gratitude and love in his eyes. In the end, the only person to show me love in a strange city was a man who was put to death for that very reason. Did this not touch your life too?
You may think that being a Roman soldier in Palestine is an easy job. Are you wrong? This is the worst place on earth to have to serve in the Roman army. There's always some uprising or disturbance that we must put down. Then today my buddies and I were ordered to take these three criminals outside the city walls and crucify them.
Pilate had turned this one because Jesus owed us to be crucified, and he told us to scourge him. He claimed to be the Son of God, a king of the Jews, but we decided to see if he really was what he had claimed. We blindfolded him and took turns striking him and pulling his beard, demanding that he tell us who had done it. Then we took off one of our scarlet robes and put it around him and put a reed in his hand. One of our buddies fashioned a crown of thorns and pressed it on Jesus' head. Then we knelt down in front of him and mocked him, "Hail, King of the Jews." We then took off the robe and led him out to Golgotha to crucify him. Yes, we crucified Jesus and those two thieves. It was not a pleasant or a fun job, but someone had to do it. We had no choice because we were under the orders of Pilate. The only extra pay for such an unpleasant duty is that we can divide among us what few items or clothing they had. Jesus did have a beautiful robe, one that didn't have a seam in it. So we decided to gamble for it instead of tearing it into 4 pieces. So at the foot of the cross, we cast dice to see who had become the proud owner of it. It was I who received this one.
When we had nailed him to the cross and the two thieves to their crosses, we had to keep watch. Then Jesus said something which I had never heard before and I will never forget. He prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." This is a story of long ago, of a man who owned a little store. He said, "I was proud to have my name up over the door." It was some 2,000 years ago, as I recall, located in Jerusalem, across the street from Pilate's Hall. I thought I had everything anyone would need, and folks would come from miles around regardless of their creed. The only thing I had I didn't think I could ever sell was in a corner on a shelf, 3 old rusty spiked nails. Then one day a big Roman soldier came through the door. As he walked up to me, it seemed he shook the floor. I said, "Can I help you, sir?" The voice, I guess, seemed frail. He looked at me with a sneering grin and said, "I want to buy some big, big nails." 3 old rusty spike nails is all I have, he said to me. "That will do for the job I have. 3's enough. Now how much do I owe you?" He put the money in my hand and I was glad to make the sale. Then I wondered and asked him, "Sir, what can you do with just 3 nails?" He said, "Did you ever hear of a man called Jesus the Nazarene?" "You mean the one who goes about doing good?" He said, "Yes, that's the man. Well, today I intend to show the world that I am boss. But with these 3 old rusty spiked nails, I'm going to nail Jesus to the cross." I stood there almost numb. You'll never know how I felt. I said, "Please, sir, don't do that," as on my knees I knelt. He just turned and walked away, and I got up and followed him. I said, "Please, sir, I'll buy them back." But he just looked at me and grinned. But in the distance, I could see the howling mob through the tears that filled my eyes. Away with him! Crucify him! I could hear their angry cries. I could hear that sound of the hammer. Over the top of all the noise and groans of agony, I could hear the sound of the hammer as that big Roman soldier nailed Jesus to a tree.
Aren't you Christ? Save yourself and us. You claim to have saved others. Prove these claims now and save yourself and us.
We have never heard of this man, Jesus, but there was something else Messiah. So I said to him, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus looked at me and replied, I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise.
Aha! He saves others. Let him save himself if he is Christ of God's chosen one. So you're going to destroy the temple and build it back in 3 days. Come down from the cross and save yourself if you're the Son of God.
I too was present at the cross, not because I wanted to be, but it was my responsibility to see that my men carried out the responsibilities, the orders of Pilate to crucify this criminal. In fact, I didn't miss time to take my family men to Gethsemane to arrest this man Jesus. There was something different about him. Even when one of his followers drew a sword and cut off the high priest's servant's ear in an effort to defend him, Jesus told his followers to put away the sword and not to use violence. That was totally different from us Barbarians. They hated the Romans and would do their best to kill as many of us as they could. He then restored the servant's ear just as if it never had happened. It was a miracle. While keeping guard there at the side of the crucifixion, there were things that he said. Father, forgive them. Today you will be with me in paradise. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? And then the concern for his mother, and finally, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Then he died. I was convinced, with all the happenings, that this man was a righteous man. I exclaimed, truly this man is the Son of God. Praise be to God.
His hands and Master told us more than once that he would die by the hands of cruel men. He said, I am going to be betrayed in the power of those who killed him. There was so much that Jesus had taught us, his faithful followers. We wanted nothing more than to serve our Master. Now they have taken him away from us. We gave up so much to be with him, our families, homes, and friends. Salome even gave her sons to the work Jesus would do.
Yes, I have sacrificed much for the Master. When my sons came to Zebedee and me to say that they were going to follow Jesus, it would have been easy to say no. We had a prosperous fishing business. We needed all the hands we had to work the nets, but we knew in our hearts that it was right to let James and John go. My sons are blessed to be called disciples of Jesus. John even became Jesus' closest friend. Now he is here with the Master's mother, and I heard Jesus say to John to take his mother and care for her. Sunday, we will go to Jesus' tomb, our last service for our Lord.
I came here today. Oh, I had to come. You see, this was the day that God forewarned me would come. This was the day that my son was to die. Jesus did not want me to come, but I knew in my heart that I had to be here. John and I came together. The other disciples fled and scattered during the trial, but John found great favor with the Master and wanted to be here with me. I had hoped in my heart that Jesus could be spared, but I knew God's will had to be done. This was his hour of glory. It was even worse than I thought it would be. I stood silent and sobbing as I watched my son's body convulse in agony and pain as the sun grew higher and higher in the sky. I saw the wounded emptiness in his eyes. I traced every bloodstream back to each gash he had received. My heart ached in sorrow. My body ached with his pain. So much seemed to be happening, yet it was though time had stood still. Jesus had been silent and quiet for some time with his eyes closed. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and he looked directly at me. He called for John to come closer. Jesus was very weak, and he spoke with great difficulty. He said, "John, thou wilt take care of her." John choked back the tears and put his arm around me. Then he said to me, This will be thy son. And I knew it would soon be over. But this was so much like Jesus, to think of others, even in his sorrow and pain. Then it was finished. My son had died. Jesus became the sacrificial lamb for the whole world.
These last 39 hours have been filled with uncertainty, upheaval, fear, and the most unbelievable happenings. Now I'm here at the cross of Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God. I do believe that he is the Lamb of God which has come to take away the sins of the world, as the prophet John the Baptist proclaimed. I believe his words now because I've been with him from the beginning of his ministries. He spoke many times about his death, and it was hard for all of us, his disciples, to understand the meaning of the words. Last night, as we were gathered in the upper room, he spoke to us of so many things to prepare us for today, but we still cannot comprehend all of them. He said, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go and prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also." He went on to tell Thomas, "I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." And now I have told you before it came to pass, that when it is come to pass, ye might believe. I now understand some of that trouble. I was there when Jesus betrayed him in the garden. I followed him in Caiaphas' palace, and then to the judgment hall of Pilate. And now I am here with his mother Mary to comfort and to help her with her troubled heart. He just told me, "Here is your mother." He has given me the oversight of his own mother. I will do my best to look after her and see to her needs. Yes, he is the Son of God.
I am Mary Magdalene. No one could ever understand the loss and sorrow I felt on this day. When they led Jesus away to be crucified, it was as if they were taking my life from me. Who was going to take care of me? You see, Jesus is my personal Redeemer. He took my life that was nothing and turned it into something good and wonderful. Jesus drove 7 demons from me and released me from sin, and ever since then I have followed the Master. I have loved him with all my heart. Then, just as he said would happen, he was taken from us, betrayed by one of his own, murdered by those he tried to love. When they were taking him away, the people to whom he had shown so much love were mocking and scourging him. My heart ached within me. Then he was placed on the cross. I cried and cried. I could see the pain he was in, and there I was, powerless to do anything for this man who had done more for me than I could ever believe was possible. Friday was a dark, cold, ugly day. There were many people at the skull. I searched and searched the crowd to see his disciples, but only John was there with the Master's mother. Then so much began to happen. The sky grew darker, the ground shook, and after 3 hours, Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Why didn't he help himself? Wasn't he more powerful than Satan and death? Why didn't he do something to help himself? Then it was over, and they let Joseph of Arimathea take Jesus to his gravesite, a garden Joseph had bought for his own tomb. I went along, unable to leave him. I stayed until the Jewish Sabbath laws forbade it any longer. Guards had been placed at the entrance to the tomb. Because time did not permit, we could not prepare Jesus' body with the incense. We, the women who had been his followers, returned to Joanna's home for the Sabbath. As soon as the first signs of light appeared on Sunday, we went to the tomb to prepare Jesus' body. How could we ever move the great stone from the front of the tomb? Would the guards Pilate placed there let us in? The sun was just coming. It was a beautiful day, so unlike Friday. As we neared the tomb, we could see the stone was already moved. Who did this? The tomb seemed empty. I went to the house of Peter and John immediately and told them, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and I don't know where they have put him." Peter and John returned with us. They entered the tomb to investigate and discovered by the orderly way the grave clothes were lying that Jesus' body had been stolen. Dazed and unsure, Peter and John returned to the city. But I stayed alone in the garden. I come to the garden alone, while the dew is still on you crying?" At first I thought he was the gardener and asked, "Sir, if you have taken him away, please tell me where you put him, and I will go and get him." Then he spoke my name, Mary, and I knew immediately that it was Jesus. The joy I felt at that moment to know Jesus lives cannot be described. It was wonderful. On Friday, we had not believed he would be with us on earth again, yet here he was, walking and talking with me. I wanted to touch him and hold him, but he would not let me because he had not yet ascended to the Father. He said, "Go find my brothers and tell them that I ascend to my Father and your Father, my God and your God." He had chosen me, Mary of Magdala, to be his first announcer of his resurrection, to go and tell the disciples the good news, our Savior lives.
Mark, we'll turn it over to you.
Certainly appreciate seeing this many out to come out and see our Sunday school program. We're certainly proud of each and every one of these kids, and certainly invite each one of you to come out and be with us each Sunday at Sunday school. Does anybody have anything before we be dismissed in the announcements? We will meet out Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock to clean the church for all day Sunday. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to say before we be dismissed? Go into the preaching.
We won't have Sunday school next Sunday either.
No, next Sunday will be our all-day Sunday. We will not have Sunday school again next Sunday.
We got some birthdays we ought to mention since we're not going to have it again next Sunday. Sally's got a birthday tomorrow, and Edna James is going to have one before we meet again. So that's 2 birthdays.
So does anybody else have one?
Jenny and Jenny James, Billy Mom.
Anybody else gonna have a birthday? Anniversary?
Me and Ron have been married for 100 years or so. Next week.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you. Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary, God bless you. Happy anniversary to you.
That is our president service. Certainly hope that everybody can